Hello, this video is presented as one in a series being produced by the Virginia Department of Education to discuss and demonstrate reading strategies. In this video, you are going to see a lesson demonstrating reciprocal teaching. Reciprocal teaching uses the skills of predicting, questioning, clarifying, and summarizing to interact with challenging material. Through the use of these four skills, the students learn how to set purposes for reading, how to critically evaluate and monitor themselves, and how to find the main idea in the text. When introducing reciprocal teaching, discuss with students why the text may be difficult to understand, why strategies are important to help with understanding and the study of the text, and how reciprocal teaching will help the students monitor themselves as they read. Give students an overall description of reciprocal teaching and explain the four strategies to be used. These are predicting, question generating, clarifying, and summarizing. Predicting causes students to activate their background knowledge and set a purpose for reading. They are called upon to predict what the author will discuss next in the text. Reading to prove or disprove their prediction becomes a new purpose for reading. Students also learn that text structures provide clues to what might happen next through the use of headings, subheadings, and questions embedded in the text. Question generating requires students to decide what information is important enough to provide substance for a question. They can teach themselves to ask questions that require them to infer and apply new information from the text. Clarifying is helpful to those students who have trouble with comprehension. They come to realize that various factors such as new vocabulary, unclear referent words, or difficult concepts may make a text hard to read. Once they are alerted to these factors, they can take the necessary steps to restore meaning. Summarizing gives the students the opportunity to identify and integrate the most important information in the text. Students begin by summarizing sentences. With time and practice, they will progress to summarizing paragraphs and passages. You will want to give students 1 day of practice for each of the four skills. For example, students may practice summarization by summarizing their favorite movies or television shows. Then they use the text to identify the main ideas in sentences and paragraphs. Repeat the same type of instruction for all of the skills. After the students have been introduced to each of the skills, introduce the students to the general procedures used in reciprocal teaching. On the first day of instruction, model reciprocal teaching. It is important to call on every student to participate at some level. As the students become more familiar with the procedure, turn over the responsibility for the dialogue to them and become a coach. Provide students with feedback, prompting them for increased and higher levels of participation. Give students an expository passage of about 1,500 words. If the passage is new to the group, ask for a prediction based on the title. If the passage is familiar to the students, ask them to recall and state the topic of the passage and any important points covered in it. You will assign a segment of the passage to be read. Either tell the students that you will be the teacher, which usually happens during the initial days of training, or assign a student to be the student teacher for this segment. Then ask the students to read the assignment silently. For each segment, you or the student teacher should ask a question, then summarize and offer a prediction or clarification when appropriate. If a student teacher is leading the reciprocal teaching, provide the guidance necessary to complete the activity using techniques such as prompting by asking, "What question do you think a teacher might ask?" Instructing is another technique. The teacher says to the student leader, "Remember, a summary is a shortened version. It doesn't include a lot of detail." Another technique to help a student teacher is modifying the activity. You could say, "If you're having a hard time thinking of a question, why don't you summarize first?" Or you could solicit the help of other students asking, "Who can help us out with this one?" The members of the group are invited to comment on or supplement each segment. When a student teacher is leading reciprocal teaching, provide praise and feedback specific to the student teacher's participation. For example, you could say, "You asked that question well. It was very clear what information you wanted," or "Excellent prediction, let's see if you're right," or "That was interesting information. Can you tell us the most important information about the paragraph?" You might ask questions such as, "Did anyone else find this statement unclear?" Or a question I would have asked would be, and you can fill in the blank. Or I would summarize by saying, again, filling in the blank at the appropriate comment. A variation of reciprocal teaching for early elementary students struggling with generating appropriate questions is to provide question words written on 3x5 index cards. These question words are who, what, where, when, why, and how. Place cards face down in the middle of a group. Have students draw one question card each from the pile and try to think of a question that begins with the words written on their cards. Students can alternate drawing cards from the pile if they get stuck and can't think of a question on their own. Parents can also use the reciprocal reading strategy with their children when reading fiction or nonfiction to, with, or as a follow-up to their child's independent reading. This strategy can also be used when watching movies or TVs. Parents may find it easier to start with those question words written on 3x5 index cards: who, what, where, when, why, and how. Place the cards face down and have the child pick a card. Now have the child try to think of a question that begins with that word. Then draw a card yourself and come up with a question too. You have just watched the Reciprocal Teaching Reading Strategy, which is part of a series demonstrating the elementary reading comprehension and vocabulary strategies found in the Virginia Standards of Learning. Thank you for joining us today.